Good morning. Today we are working on PO15. I can compare and order fractions. Notice it is a PO. This is a power objective. It's one of those really important ones. We need to know how to compare our fractions and how to put them in order, knowing what's the least and what's the greatest. So I need us really paying attention. The last few objectives have focused on working with fractions in various ways, right? So we've been getting comfortable with our fractions, equivalent fractions, simplifying our fractions, finding equivalent fractions, simplifying them, and comparing a fraction to 0, half, or 1. This objective is going to practice using those methods to compare our values. So it's taking what we've been learning, and now we're going a step further with it. So quick review of our symbols. What is this first symbol where it's gobbling up on the left side? That means, gobbling up on the right side. That left side is what? Zelda?
Less than.
Less than. So that means if we're gobbling up on that left side, it's going to be greater than, because we always want to gobble where the bigger number is. I always think about that crocodile wants to eat the biggest number. So now we're going to compare the fractions using less than, greater than, or equal to. Show how you can use equivalent fractions to do this. Now this is important. We want to use equivalent fractions. What's the easiest way to compare fractions? What do we need to have to really compare them, Melanie? Common denominator. So we can really know what we're comparing. So if I look at 3 and 4, what might my common denominator be? Hannah? 12. So to go from 3 to 12, I need to multiply by 4. So whatever I do to my denominator, I do to my numerator. 1 times 4 is 4. To go from 4 to 12, I'm multiplying by 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So 1 times 3 is 3. I couldn't really compare it easily when I had 1/3 and 1/4 because they both had that 1 on the top. They're both, we know, close to 0, but oh gosh, I don't know which one is bigger. I have to really think about it. But if I get myself a common denominator, and I see 4/12 and 3/12, is it easy to know which one is the bigger one? 4 or 3? Which one's bigger? 4, you're right, Claire. So that means if 4/12 is bigger, it means it's the greater than sign we want to put. Let's look at our next one. What is a common denominator? Madeline? 35. What am I multiplying the 5 by to get to 35? Zelda?
7, and then you do 5 on the other side.
So I'm sticking with one side first. So if I had 5 times 7 is 35, what's 2 times 7?
10.
2 times 7?
14.
14. Then on the other side, Zelda's right, I have to do 7 times 5 to get to 35. So what's 3 times 5? If you know it, just say it.
15.
15. So when I looked at 2/5 and 3/7, I really wasn't sure which one is bigger and which one is smaller. But if I look at 14/35 and 15/35, do I know which one my bigger number is? Yeah, which one's bigger, Layla? 14 or 15? 15 is bigger than the 14. So I know it's a less than symbol. So let's look at our next one. I see 4/3 and 23/18. They're both improper. I don't know. What do you think I should do for my common denominator? Jimena? Talk me through your thought process.
Because 3 times 16.
Okay, so we want to multiply by 6 to get a common denominator of 18. 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24. This one already had 18 as our common denominator. So it's easy to compare. I only had to change one of them. Which number is bigger, 24 or 23, Ava? 24 is bigger, so I know it's a greater than sign I need. Let's look at our next one. 5 ninths and 7 twelfths. What do you think my common denominator is going to be? Layla? We could times them by themselves. We're going to get a really big number if we're doing 9 times 12. Can anybody find a smaller number? Connor, do you know it? Madeline?
Well, you can do 9 times 4 and 12 times 3.
Because that gives us what denominator? A common denominator of 36. So Madeline said 9 times 4, because 4 times 9 is 36, 4 times 5 is 20. And then she said 12 times 3 is 36, 7 times 3 is 21. Now Layla wasn't wrong. I could multiply 9 and 12 together. So that would, if I were to multiply by 12, 9 times 12 would be 108. And 12 times 5 is 60. And then over here, I multiply by 9 and I get 108. And 9 times 7 is 63. They're both telling me the same thing. I like using smaller numbers because I know those multiplication facts a lot easier, and I don't. 9 times 12 I have to think about. Okay, that's not one that I have easily memorized. So I don't know I can do multiplying by 12. It just doesn't come quite as easy. So I like to find the smaller number that we could use, but either way we can see 21 is bigger than 20. 63 is bigger than 60, so we know it is a less than sign. So it really doesn't matter how we come about that common denominator, as long as we do our multiplication facts correctly. Last one, 3/8 and 1/4. Jimena?
So to get you could times the whole by 2.
Yeah. Because that would be 4 times 2 is 8, 1 times 2 is 2, and look at that, we already have 8 as our denominator. So I can see 3 is greater than 2, so it's a greater than sign. Does that make sense? Our next section says we can do this by simplifying the fractions. So let's see what we saw how to use the equivalent fractions. Now how can we do this by simplifying fractions? Twelve 18ths and 9 27ths. How do I simplify these? Callie?
You can simplify them by 3.
I could divide a 3 out. So 18 divided by 3 is 6, 12 divided by 3 is 4. I can divide a 3 out here. 9 divided by 3 is 3, 27 divided by 3 is 9. Is it easy for me to compare? So you're right, we're gonna want to divide down, but do I want to divide both sides by the same number? No, because what do I want to get on the bottom, Hannah? We want that common denominator. So what do you think, if I have 18 and 27, what do you think that smallest common denominator might be? Because I certainly don't want to have to go up and say 18 times 27, because that's really big numbers to multiply. So this time I want to divide down. Melanie? 9. I want to get 9 as my common denominator. So what am I gonna divide 18 by to get down to 9? Lauren? 2. So 18 divided by 2 gave me 9. 12 divided by 2 is what? 6. How am I gonna go from 27 down to 9? Layla? Divide by 3. 27 divided by 3 is 9. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Can I compare them now? Yeah. So we can see that 6 is bigger than the 3, so it's going to be greater than. So we have 20 35ths and 8 14ths. What do you think my common denominator is going to be? I like how Lily is thinking, oh, I know my multiplication facts, I just want a little help. I know I have a multiplication table in my planner. Yes, you can use that. What should our common denominator be with 35 and 14? Melanie? 7. What am I going to divide 35 by to get to 7? Zelda?
5.
Dividing by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 20 divided by 5 is 4. What do I divide 14 by to get to 7, Claire? 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 8 divided by 2 is 4. What symbol am I going to use, Liv? Equal. 20 35ths equals 8 14ths because they are both 4 7ths. Let's look at our next one. 8 tenths and 24 40ths. What common denominator do I want to do? Claire. You want to keep thinking? Help her out, Lauren. What do you think? I could go down to 10. 10 and 10 are the same, so my numerator stays the same. What do I divide 40 by to get to 10? Mena? 4. 40 divided by 4 is 10. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So what symbol am I going to put in the middle of them, Lauren? Greater than, because 8 is greater than 6. Is that the only denominator I can simplify down to? Zelda, what else could I simplify to?
You could do like 5.
Yeah.
And
I could have 5s as my denominator. And I could say 10 divided by 5. Oh, sorry. 10 divided by 2 gave me 5. So 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. And I could do 40 divided by 8 gave me 5. 24 divided by 8 gives me 3. I get the same answer, that greater than symbol. So it doesn't matter what common denominator you find as long as you do your math correctly. Next one, 2 18ths and 40 over 90. What common denominator do they share, Ava? 9. What am I going to divide 18 by to get to 9, Ava?
2.
2. So what's 2 divided by 2? 1. What do I divide 90 by to get to 9? 10. What's 40 divided by 10?
4.
4. So what symbol am I going to put in there? Less than. 1 is less than 4. So less than is my answer. And my last one, 30 and 40. What's my common denominator? Callie? 10. What do I divide 30 by to get to 10?
3.
3. What's 21 divided by 3?
7.
What do I divide 40 by to get to 10? What's 28 divided by 4?
7.
So what symbol do I have for 21 30ths and 28 40ths? Equals. 7 tenths equals 7 tenths. Now let's look at the last way to compare our fractions. This is using that 0, half, or 1. So let's look at our fractions. We're going to write underneath our fraction if it's closer to 0, closer to the half, or closer to 1. Because when I look at 19 and 24, is there a common denominator that they share without multiplying 19 by 24? No, there's not an easy denominator. It's not easy to get to the same thing. So we're going to look at our comparing. 18 19ths is close to what? 0, half, or 1? Lauren? 1. 5 24ths is close to 0, half, or 1?
Yeah.
Madeline? 0. Can I put a symbol in comparing 1 and 0? Sure, 1 is definitely greater than 0. So I don't have to do all that math, multiplying my denominators together to get to that common denominator. I can just compare them to 0, half, and 1. Let's look at our next one. 1/11 is closest to what?
0.
19/50 is closest to what? A half. Because a half of 50 is 25. 19 is closer to 25 than it is to 0. What symbol can I use to compare them? Less than. 0 is less than a half. Ava? Yes. Oh. 8/8 is close to what, Ava?
1.
65/65 is close to what, Ava?
1.
And so what symbol do I put? So even though we looked at that and we knew it, we still have to explain how we know. We still have to show it. What the? All right, 22/40. Connor. 5/12. Ooh, but are they exactly a half? So we can't look at this and say it's an equal to, because 22/40 is not actually equal to a half, and 5/12 is not actually equal to a half. So how do I compare two numbers that are close to a half? Think about that number line that we worked on when we were talking about those halves. Melanie?
Like which one is bigger than the actual half?
22 is bigger than an actual half because the halfway was 20. Half of 12 is 6. So 5/6 is less than a half. So do we know which one is the bigger number? Which one is bigger, Melanie?
22/40.
22/40, because it's bigger than a half, whereas 5/6 was less than a half. So 22/40 is our bigger number. So even though they both are close to a half, you have to look, is it just less than a half or is it just bigger than a half? And our last one, 9/16 is close to what? A half. Because we know a half would be 8/16. 14/28 is a half because it is actually equal to a half. Because a half of 28 is 14. So what symbol am I going to put there? Because I'm comparing a half to a half. So is 9 bigger than the half or less than a half? Bigger. And this one's actually equal to. So 9 is greater than 8, whereas 14 is equal to 14. So we know that 9 is greater than. 9/8 or 9/16 is greater than. Do you see how we compare those halves and halves? This is how we explain how we know. We are showing our work. I don't want you just to write a symbol. On the test, I want to know that you understand it. We're not just going to write symbols. We're going to show how we know. So show what you're comparing. So let's look on our second page. It says, using whatever method you choose, order the fractions from least to greatest. So in the first two rows, we're just getting two sets of fractions. So we're gonna know which one's smaller and which one's bigger. You can look at your numbers and say, hey, should I do equivalent fractions? Should I do simplifying? Or can I compare them to 0, half, and 1? Whichever one works the easiest for those fractions. So if we look at that first one, 3/8 and 1/2, which one do you think is smaller? Hannah?
3/8.
Why?
Because a half, or 1 is closer to 2, and, like 3 is closer to 0, or 3/8 is just smaller than a half.
But how do you know that?
Oh, I multiplied a half times 4/4 to get the same common denominator.
So you found equivalent fractions. So you said, okay, I want that denominator of 8. So you use those equivalent fractions. So you're going to want to show that because we want to show our work. So 3/8 is smaller than 4/8. So we know, we don't have to say the less than or greater than, but we know that 3/8 is smaller than 1/2. We want to put them in order, smaller to bigger. So we don't have to put the symbols for this, we just have to put them in the correct order. So if we look down, all of a sudden we see that we have 3 fractions. We're doing the same thing. We're going to look at, is there a common denominator? Is there a simplifying that we can do? Is there comparing it to 0, half, or 1? What do you think we should do to compare half, 12/16, and 6/24? What do you think, Zelda?
Simplify them.
Okay, so 1/2 is already as simple as we get. 12/16 I can divide a 4 out. 12 divided by a 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then 6/24 I can divide a 6 out. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 24 divided by 6 is 4. Now what should I do? What do you think I should do next to be able to compare them? Callie, say that again.
Like order.
How can I put them in order?
You could switch around 3/4.
Tell me what one of our strategies you're using to know the order to put them. So you're looking at the 0, the half, and the 1. So is 1/2 close to 0, a half, or 1? It's going to be closest to a half, right? That one it's kind of given. 3/4, is that going to be closest to 0, a half, or 1? 1, right? Because it's bigger than a half. 1/4 is going to be closer to 0. So now I can put them in order. When I put stuff in order, I always go back to my original fraction. So I'm going to say, okay, the one that's closest to 0 was 6/24. I'm going to put that first. Then I have the one at the halfway mark was a half. And the one closest to 1 was 12/16. So my final answer is going to be my original fractions put from the least to the greatest. Melanie.
Like whenever you're doing 1/4, like closest to 0, wouldn't it also kind of be half? Because like 1 is 1.
You're correct. It could be, but in my head, I knew that we had one that was a half. So I knew 1/4 was smaller than a half. So that's why I put that as a 0. Because it's the same thing with 3/4. It's kind of in between 2/4 and 4/4. But I knew it was bigger than the half. So I put it as a 1. I was doing that in my head, not saying it out loud. Any other questions or comments on those? Okay, so when we put them in order, we always put our original fractions. Show me how you know what is the least and what is the greatest. So use those strategies from that first page. Are you finding equivalent fractions? Show me. Are you simplifying them? Show me. Are you comparing them to 0, 1, and a half? Show me. And then put them in the least to greatest order. Any questions on today's assignment? Remember, today is Thursday. Khan Academy is due. Tomorrow is Friday. If you want that math packet corrected and returned to you so you can fix up mistakes, I need it by tomorrow. It is due next week, Tuesday. But if you turn it in Monday or Tuesday, you get the grade that you get. If you turn it in by tomorrow, you have the opportunity to fix your mistakes. So Khan Academy due tonight. Math packets due on Tuesday. Turn it in by Friday to be able to make your corrections. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.